Jewish Insights with Justin Pines on JBS is made possible in part by the clubs at Pearl River, New York, luxury rental communities for ages 55 and better, now leasing Phase 3 at the Reserve, and the B.L. Manger Foundation.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבשחים גם יוחד הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבשחים גם יוחד.
Shalom and welcome to Jewish Insights. We are currently embarking on a journey through one of the potentially most powerful and transformative experiences of Jewish tradition, the holiday of Passover, the Seder, and the Haggadah. But as one of the great heroes of American film, Ferris Bueller, twice said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. I remember the first time I experienced the commandment to eat matzah. It wasn't as a child at my Baba and Zadie's house when my cousin David hid the afikomen under a rug that everyone stepped on and we all had to eat dirty crumbs. It wasn't when I was in law school and introduced my friends down my hall to matzah pizza for the first time. The first time I truly experienced matzah was after I married my wife Tali, and I joined her family for a Seder about 10 years ago. When we arrived at the time to eat matzah, after washing our hands, we sat silently, as is the tradition between the blessing on washing hands and eating any motzi. Tali's father, Dr. Yitzchak Goldberg, a disciple and acolyte of Harav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik Zatzal, may the memory of the righteous be a blessing, and someone who was very careful about following Jewish law, proceeded to say the Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, and then the blessing on fulfilling the mitzvah of eating matzah. He then measured out the shi'ur, the required legal amount of matzah to be eaten to fulfill the mitzvah, which is actually a quite large amount of matzah. Something like this. Pretty big. And he handed it to each of us. The entire room then continued in silence as each of us ate our portion of matzah, only hearing the crunch of the matzah. Those few quiet minutes, surrounded by family, doing nothing other than focusing on slowly, deliberately experiencing matzah with all 5 of my senses, with my full attention and contemplation, that was the first time I truly connected with the commandment to eat matzah at the Passover Seder. What does it mean to experience the Seder fully, in a way that we won't miss it? How can it transform our lives well beyond the night of the Seder? To help guide us on our path, we're excited to welcome back to the show Rabbi Judah Mischel, Executive Director of Camp HASC, the Hebrew Academy for Special Children, who is a beloved educator, leader, and storyteller, and who has infused his new Haggadah, Baderech, along the path of redemption, with deep insights, contemporary relevance, and the soulful spirit of Hasidut and Jewish mysticism. Rabbi Mischel's work reminds us that redemption is not just an event of the past. The Baderech Haggadah invites us to see ourselves as active participants in an ongoing process of redemption. It invites us to be Baderech, on the path toward deeper faith, unity, and geula, redemption. Let's dive in with Rabbi Judah Mischel.
Wow, thank you.
It's great to see you. I know that you're on a trip from Israel and we're squeezing in among many things, so it's really a zchut, a merit to be sitting with you.
So happy to be here, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Amazing. All right, so let's jump in. First of all, this is part 2. You know, there's a Baderech series now, Mazal Tov, that's very exciting. Tell us a little bit about why there's a Baderech series. The first is along the path to Teshuvah for the month of Elul leading to the high holidays. Why is this series called Baderech?
That's the nature of the world and the nature of every individual is that we're in process. So often we get stuck in this notion of performance and bottom line and results. But the Yiddishkeit, Judaism, really thrives in this space of process, of being a work in progress, of never really completing or finishing the job, but doing our best and trying to dig deep to work on it. So. As much as that's true in the world of tshuva, of restoring and returning to our source and in our relationship with God. So Pesach is a time where there's actually a step-by-step guide of how to journey through this experience together. And I once wrote the first one, got to keep the brand going a little bit. I'll say that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there's this step-by-step process. One of the things that surprised me the second I opened the book is that I think almost over 100 pages at the beginning are devoted to the month of Nisan.
Yes.
To the month leading up to the Seder, right? You typically open a Haggadah. It starts with Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas. It has the list of the Seder night. And you have Nisan is your first half of the book.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Nisan.
Deliberately so. I'm so glad that you noticed that because and nothing happens in a vacuum. Context is important. I think that we've heard that refrain, over these past few months. Well, it depends on the context. The Seder doesn't just happen on its own. Like it doesn't just, and not just talking about the cooking and cleaning and shopping and preparation and all of that. The Seder comes in the middle of the month of Nisan. And all holiness requires preparation. Anything that's important, anything that's meaningful, there's a lead up to it. The Super Bowl doesn't just happen. And if the Seder night is our Super Bowl with more mitzvot and more opportunities and more on the line, all the chips are down, so to speak, and people show up. According to the Pew study, Jews show up for Passover more than any other day or any other life cycle experience or any other point in the calendar. Passover is our national point of showing up and being open to tradition and meaning. So there's a little bit of a lead up to that. Passover takes place in the month of Nisan. Our sages say that in the month of Nisan we were redeemed. In the month of Nisan we will in the future be redeemed as well. And I wanted to honor that tradition by trying to, at least for myself, this is not just like what I'm telling other people, it requires effort to kind of get in the mindset. You have your preseason, regular training camp, preseason, regular season, playoffs, wild card, till we get to that big night. And that big night is so meaningful, because of the investment that we make leading up to it and the different spiritual practices and opportunities that we're invited to participate in leading up to it. So I appreciate that you noticed that.
Of course. I'll ask you one in there. There's so many pieces of it, but we'll riff for a second. One for me that was so important as a kid, but I think now we travel more around Passover that it's kind of fallen by the wayside, is searching for Chametz the night before. When I mentioned that ritual to you, how does that help us prepare?
It's one of the most sacred and wonderful nights of the year in our house. There is pressure on Passover, and for those who are tethered to a tradition, you mentioned your father-in-law, who I know. My father-in-law also is a student of Rabbi Soloveitchik, so the world of measurement and metrics and halakha is very central to our practice. There's a lot that goes into Passover, right? And besides for all the positive things that we're commanded to do proactively, the eating of the matzah and the leaning and the wine and the meal and the telling of the story and the transmission of the values, there's, first things first, you got to clean your house. There's no chametz, no leavened products or bread anywhere. And that, different people kind of observe that in different ways, but everybody kind of recognizes that that's part of it, that there's a not doing. So sometimes a not doing or refraining from can just kind of be performative or even negative, being restrictive. So what we try to do in our home is to engage everybody. I think it was Mother Teresa who said, I don't know if that was on your bingo card, but Mother Teresa said if everyone would sweep their own front steps, then the world would be clean. Pesach is about, the laws of cleaning for Pesach is I don't have to clean your house. You're not my responsibility. My obligation and my responsibility is my space, my home. And, no one knows what's going on in my house, what needs to be cleaned up and attended to more than, myself and my partner and my wife. So it's an opportunity to engage the family and kind of engage whoever you're with, your partner, your roommate, your living space, your family, to say like, we're going to create a sacred space here and we're going to do this together and everyone's going to clean their room. And you clean your drawers and you clean your spot. And then the public domain, the shared spaces of the home, we kind of, do together. And the more everyone's engaged in it, the more it leads up to this excitement that like something is happening here that's collaborative. And then comes the night of B'dikat Chametz, the searching out of the Chametz. And it's such a special night. We turn off the lights, we light a candle, and there's 10 pieces of bread that are prepared. And there's a mystical intention in that, corresponding to the different sphirot, the different ways that God reflects and is refracted within the traits of mankind.
So we're searching for God's aspects and removing them from the house?
What we're doing is like, it's interesting you mentioned, like there's I'll give you the cliff notes.
Please.
Right? The world is created in 10 statements.
Uh-huh.
That's what the Talmud tells us. The world is created in 10 statements. That was the purpose of the world is in these 10 statements. Right? Vayihi or, let there be light at the beginning, and then Na'aseh Adam, let us create man, let us make man together, a partnership of the divine and human beings in 10 statements. There are also 10 commandments that kind of build us up. In Egypt, in Mitzrayim, the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God that's reflected in man, was attempted to be removed by Pharaoh. And it was a brutal society. It was a society of many gods. It wasn't a place where the soul of mankind was celebrated, so to speak. And therefore, da'at, right, an awareness of God, was driven out of the public sphere, driven out of the society and of human interaction. The Makot, the 10 plagues, another series of 10, another unit of 10. If you look at, the textually, there's a refrain, the notion of consciousness, da'at, where the awareness of God is kind of reintroduced in all of, society within the earth, so to speak, to build us up again in this framework of 10. So there's a tradition, not just of searching out for chametz, but of actually planting 10 little pieces of bread around the house in different parts of the house, and we search it out very traditionally with light, vayihi or, with light, so to speak, to reenact this step-by-step process of creation and of preparation for divine partnership and sacred space. And it's a nod, so to speak, to what took place in Egypt. And the goal of the exodus of Egypt, which is the receiving of the Torah and the nation of Israel coming to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, so to speak, to recreate the world together with God. Now, I wrote a lot about it in the Haggadah, not so that, that night we're just kind of cramming it out, but to kind of give a little bit of a background, a little bit of a parchment on which the practice can unfold. To know that there's something happening here. It's not just some performative, perfunctory, thing that, baba maisa, so to speak, that we do, but there's something here that's very deep and intentional in the whole thing. And when we do it in our home, with our kids, and I have regular kids like everybody, we turn off the lights and the kids hide the pieces of bread around the house. They each, put it in their room and their places. My wife puts it in a couple of places. And then we light lanterns, like from IKEA. We have these little lanterns from IKEA, little tea lights. And we sit at the table. And first what we do is we try to search within ourselves. All right? Now, we have a notion in the sages, right, that anything that is negative, we can also learn positive. It's like the not doing brings us to doing, or the refraining brings us to something proactive. So as we're searching out chametz that we want to remove from our home, we have a practice where we sit around the table. We do it every year. Everybody gets a little piece of paper and a pen. We light these lanterns. Everybody has something in front of them that illuminates. Our son likes with this big, military grade flashlight, like he insists on using, like he's got that. And we try to write down, things about ourselves that we feel good about, that we feel excited about, that we feel proud of. Little points of light. And I described it in the Haggadah as a suggested practice that we do. And it's super meaningful. It's super meaningful. It's something that gonna go and to search out not just what we want to remove from our home, but what we want to amplify in our home. Sure. And it's great. And then we kind of we write it up, and then with this positive, the next day, and then we go out around the house with our meds, and each kid takes a turn leading us to their room or their place.
So they go to their own one.
And we all follow, and we sing a little bit, and it's like this really beautiful kind of thing. It's not like hours long. But it's beautiful. We kind of sing different different songs that are really soulful and beautiful, and it's actually really awesome, and our kids actually look forward to it. Wow. And then we find the chametz in their room, we put it into the little bag, and then the next day when we go to the bi'ur chametz, the burning of the chametz, we take all these little pieces of paper, and I say with all of our good and all of our positive attributes and all of our accomplishments and everything we're proud of, that, by amplifying that, that's how we're going to get rid of all the bad. Not by focusing on the negative. And then I light that, and then that becomes the flame. I just kind of throw that in, and then...
Amazing.
Yeah, it's actually really beautiful.
You set the beautiful things people wrote about themselves on fire, and the fire explodes and consumes the chametz.
Yeah, so if you want to get rid of negative, then it's only going to be by illuminating and amplifying and giving a platform to that which we're proud of and positive.
Amazing. Thank you for taking something that I feel is hard to lock into and making it so beautiful. Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
You mentioned the word redemption in the title here. You talk about going from redemption to redemption. The Hebrew perhaps geula, is that the right? Unpack that for me a little bit. What does redemption mean to you, and how are we trying to achieve redemption through the Seder? Start up big.
Let's start big. Let's zoom out, right? God has a plan for the world. There is order to creation. There is Seder. Seder actually means order. Mm-hmm. It's actually why I wrote this Haggadah, was to try to anchor and tether myself to something which felt stable during a very unstable time. Mm-hmm. Started writing this Hanukkah after October 7th.
Wow.
When we were desperate.
A couple months after.
Yeah, it was actually our two married daughters' husbands were both out, one in Jenin, one in Gaza, and there was just this intensive uncertainty and tension and fear, and a lot of crying by the lighting of the candles, a lot. And I just felt helpless and I turned to Hashem, and I hadn't really been able to pray very much in those days. And I just said, let's go, let's get some geula here. Hanukkah is a miracle time, and there's a military victory. I'm like, let's go, we know how to do this. And the next morning I went to shul, and I usually just kind of had been sitting there in space. There were times where I'd sit there in my talit and tefillin, and I'd see people leaving, and I didn't even realize whoa, I missed it just from and that day I actually said, okay, I'm going to actually pray for a miracle. I'm going to pray for redemption, salvation. Because I don't know, is Bibi? It's not Bibi. It's not Bibi. It's not yes Bibi. It's not the army. Right. That didn't go. It's not the left, and it's not the right. It's got to be a higher power. It's got to be something more. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're doing our part, and everybody's pitching in, and everybody's trying, and we're all, in this world doing our best, trying to navigate the chaos and the uncertainty. But for God's sakes, God, for your sake, just reveal yourself. And that morning, bam, I locked into the splitting of the sea, Az Yashir, the song of the sea. And all of a sudden, all this imagery of God's outstretched arm and the clarity of redemption that took place in Egypt, and then the splitting of the sea and these open miracles, I'm like, that's what we need. We don't need a right-wing government or a, judicial reform, and maybe we do, but that's not the answer. Mm-hmm. That's not the redemption we're looking for. That's kind of I don't know. That's another round of where I'm looking for something here with God's outstretched arm, something biblical, something like the Haggadah, to write a new Haggadah Shal Pesach about, something redemptive, geula. Yeah. And it got me really locked in on this imagery, and that's where this emerged from, because redemption is self-actualization as a nation. It's manifesting. It's the fulfillment of God's plan for the world. It's peace. It's all of these things that we yearn for and hope for as a society and as a people that seem so far off and intangible and almost okay, whatever. You're just one of these people tell me, who to vote for in the WZO election. Right. Tell me what's it going to look like with the enlistment of the Haredi community in the army, and how are we going to figure out here, whatever, left wing, right? And all of that is very self-limiting. It's part of our life, and we're in it. But redemption is something which is transcendent, and it's something which is much bigger than that. Right? Talk about this zoom out. Hashem created the world for a reason. Geula is that reason. And Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, and the nations of the world have to have a part in that. So, on one hand, Passover is a time for us to look back and think about the redemption from Egypt, and then we kind of, over 2,000 years of exile, have kind of thought about what that means on a personal level, on an individual level. It's me breaking my bad habits, it's me overcoming my negative midot, my traits, it's thinking about our salvation, how we survived the Inquisition and the Warsaw Ghetto, and we ate matzah in Auschwitz, and all these different, moments of, so to speak, spiritual heroism and victory and personal transcendence, and, karva al nafshi ge'ala, how I personally yearn for a redemption from my imprisonment and my self-limiting sense of life. And that's also part of geula. But geula is the revelation of godliness and with his ultimate plan, his plan, not according to my understanding, but to think big, Beit HaMikdash, temple, Jerusalem, not just statehood, but like real sovereignty, freedom to not be afraid of what people think of us as individuals and also as a nation. Right? To stand on our own 2 feet and have our value system not just like be based on some parliamentary European something or other, or some Eastern European, Polish experience that we had there, Yiddishkeit and Judaism with the traditions there. All that is beautiful and good and kind of got us to this point, but like, who's us? Who's the real me? And Pesach kind of like awakens us to recognize that like, hey, we were real slaves in real Egypt, and Pharaoh bathed in our blood. But God took us out with an outstretched arm and turned darkness into light. What does that mean for me and you and all of us? Everyone in their own way and according to their own practice and tradition and level of observance as a nation. Like what's the next big redemption? What's that next big step for us as a people in the land of Israel, with the nations of the world, with the ingathering of the exiles, with the restoration of prophecy? And it came, I don't know, this is like kind of my effort at hopefully working through some of those ideas of what it means to me living in these extraordinary times.
Beautiful. And just to follow that a little bit further, there's many images of what redemption is and how to get there. And so do you see this as something that like we need to be praying more from, and then we need to God's outstretched hand to intervene in history? Or do you see this as something that is work we have to do internally that helps bring us there, or somewhere in the middle? How do you think about, how do we get to redemption?
I kind of think it's happening.
Okay.
Meaning there's different stages of redemption, right? I mean, we're in a stage of birur, of process, right? We are Baderech, so to speak. All of humanity is in a state of process and refinement. I believe that that's accelerated since October 7th, since Simchat Torah. The needle is moving forward more. As it says in the Torah, the more they pressure and persecute us, that's how we proliferate and shine. That's like the pressure cooker, the Korah Barzel of Egypt, kind of like from that we emerge a nation. I think the soul of the Jewish people is emerging more since this war. There's a lot of noise and there's a lot of distraction.
Sure.
I believe that's the minority. I mean, I know that it's a minority because the major story in all of the Israeli and news stories about what's going on in Israel is that there's massive protests. I was in that protest 2 nights ago in Jerusalem. There were not 100 people there. 100. There were more people at our women's event for the book launch.
Right.
No, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
There were more women.
Yeah.
A couple hundred women there who were sitting and enjoying listening to Torah and singing beautifully with Shmuel.
It's not making the news.
No, outside there was just these horns and loud and blocking. The Knesset was closed down.
Yeah.
There were a few dozen people there.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that the Knesset was closed and Israel's in chaos and torn apart. I mean, there were literally a few dozen people there.
Right.
So, like, I don't believe that the extremes on the edge are really the story. It's just a distraction from the story. The vast majority of the nation of Israel, to the left, to the right, and everywhere in between, are healthy and are working to create, with our own ideas, a higher way of living and a greater society, shoulder to shoulder in this war. And I believe that the Ribbon Shalom, the Master of the world, is waiting for us to just continue going forward. In gathering of the exiles, it's happening.
Yeah,
it's happening. I mean, I look around everywhere I go. There are olim who are making an impact in Israeli society. There are communities that are being built up, in Netanya and Efrat and in Ramat Beit Shemesh and in Modi'in and in Ra'anana and in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv of olim that are really at the forefront of that. Many of them are your friends and mine, who are really shaping Israeli society and have a voice there. That's called Kibbutz Galiot.
Right.
Tchiyat HaMetim is happening.
The revival of the dead.
There's a revival of the dead, of those dry bones that are coming to life again. We're seeing the soul of the Jewish people emerge, and the more that we're showing up for it and open our hearts to it and our consciousness to say, like, we're here for something big. Master of the world, like we're ready. We're ready, and we're not just mailing it in, we're not just checking boxes, but we're ready for the next stage of Jewish life and Jewish history to build just like a greater Jewish society with deeper Jewish engagement. We're ready to stand up against jihadis on campus and in the UN and in the Congress. And you're seeing that.
Right.
We're ready for more engagement in Jewish symbols and Jewish pride. I believe that the Master of the world is just waiting for us to step forward a little bit more, and then it's just bam, bam, I think we're at the goal line.
Beautiful. And that you write beautifully in here around the passage of Vihisha Amda, the idea that in every nation they will rise up against us and God will save us from their ams. You share a story from Moses Montefiore, and you write more beautifully there. You want to just say a little bit about that, this idea of...
Oh, that story?
Yeah.
That's a story.
Yeah. Go for it.
I probably wrote it better than I'll say it.
That's okay.
You're
a decent storyteller.
I mean, Moses... I love that story. Because Moses Montefiore was, he was the Elon Musk of his generation. I don't mean to trigger anyone. I mean just in terms of influence, disproportionate influence and wealth.
Yeah.
He had entry to every level of government and influence in every government around the world. But lahavdil, I'll make a separation between the two. He actually was like a very engaged Jew, a very proud Jew.
Right.
And his trip to Israel that he made, it was like his birthright trip to Israel. Like he came back, he didn't fall in love with some cute soldier, but he came back really pumped up about his Yiddishkeit. Yeah. Had a Sefer Torah written to travel with, and wanted to have a minyan everywhere he went. Anyways, he was traveling once in Russia, and with his entourage, he rolled with quite a crowd, quite a chevra. He had bodyguards and a whole entourage there with him. And as they were going through the countryside, this very visible, well-known, identifiable Jew, some peasant kids, just started throwing rocks and yelled, in Russian, Jew, very, degrading, Jew. And Mandelson says, he kind of noticed, the thing got pelted with rocks. He tells the driver, stop the wagon. And he gets out his guys, with these bodyguards get out. And he says, go get him, grab him. I always imagine that scene from The Godfather where he says, prop him up, put him up there. And then he hits him. Yeah. He's like, go get him. And these guards go grab these kids, these little Russian, Goyish kids, these Gentile kids, grab them, and these kids are white in the face. And Montefiore walks up to them and says, say it again to my face. And they're he goes, tell me, what did you yell? What did you say? What did you have to say? And they said, looking at each other, he goes, tell me, look at me in the eye and say it. He said, we yelled Jew. And they're bracing themselves to get whacked. Montefiore had a big smile on his face. He said, I want you to know, it's the greatest compliment that anybody can give me. I appreciate the reminder. It means a lot to me that you know that I'm a Jew. And I thank you for that. And he turned to his guy and said, give them each a silver coin. He gave these little Russian Goyish peasant kids on the side of the road throwing a rock at a Yid. Give them, just thank you for reminding me. Wow. Thank you for reminding me. I'm not saying everyone should go to Yimach Shemo's website, Kanye's website, and buy T-shirts and whatever. But thank you for the reminder that, that there are quite a few of our neighbors out there that see us as different. Vihisha Amda, La'avotenu V'lanu, Pesach is about Jewish symbols and practice. It's about us putting a little blood on the doorpost and saying this is a Jewish home. Yeah. And we're going to buy matzah and we're going to do Jewish. Jewish people want to be Jewish and do Jewish. You see it. The Pew Study says it. The numbers are there. It's time we want to hold, we believe in our traditions and in our faith and in our grandparents, and there's something there which is almost super rational. Even someone who's going to literally, the next morning go out to get the breakfast special at Wendy's. Sure. Passover, I want tradition. I want Yiddishkeit. I want identity. I want God. Mm-hmm. I want to be part of the story. Mm-hmm. And these days, I feel it. I kind of I know it's. I don't love this whole focus on fighting anti-Semitism. Sure. To be honest with you, I don't want to say bad. I'm not, but I don't know. Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady to make a commercial, spend millions of dollars, and that's the message we have to the world. Don't hate us. I don't know. Our message for the world is so rich and so deep, and so it's exciting. Ethics, morality, Torah, light, goodness, compassion, redemption. We have what to say. We have what to say to the world. Not just oh, don't hate us because we're like that's weak, that's reactive, it's defensive, it's exiled. Like Pesach is our time to stand up and say, we have a tradition, and our tradition is beautiful, and we have a Torah, and that Torah is meaningful. And everyone according to their own level of observance and awareness and comfort level, we come together and we do tradition. And part of that tradition is saying, like, we've faced down bad guys before, and we've survived. And, there's something to that. Why? To ask that question, like, what does that demand of us? What opportunity does that provide us? And I love that story, and I appreciate that you brought it up, because, there's something about anti-Semitism which is, I don't know if it's scary, but like more than that, there's something exciting in it, something validating in it for me.
Beautiful. I would say, first of all, we had Rabbi David Foreman on here to talk about Purim, and one of the things that I took away from talking to him was this idea that one of the key moments of the Megillah is when Esther has to admit she's Jewish.
Yeah.
That's the moment, right? Esther decides, I'm going to be Jewish in front of the king. I'm going to shift that. And to me, I've been thinking a lot about, like, what does it mean to just, like, lean into your Judaism? One step, wherever you're at. You don't pray, you start praying. You don't wear a Jewish star, you wear a Jewish star. You don't wear kippah, all those things, like, to lean into it a little bit more. And for you, and you write beautifully in the Seder, like, this idea that the Seder is helping us shift our focus away from feeling like victims and recognizing, like, what's special about us. A reminder of who we are. Anti-Semitism is not, we need to only defend and protect Jewish bodies, but it asks the question, who are we? What are we about?
Yeah, I think it was Bill Ackman, who said, who made a comment online, or he posted something online early in the war, and so subsequently there was a picture of him wearing tefillin, posted something about, like, now is the time for Jews to, like, do Jewish, or whatever that thing was, and Michael Rappaport, there's so many. Our community to, like, just do Jewish, be Jewish, not to cower, not to be afraid. I was with my daughter in last year. We came to the States for a few days. I spoke at an event, a Yud Tet Kislev event for Chabad in Brooklyn at a theater, and there was a big protest outside, and I was loving it. I was like, I got juiced from it, And my daughter was like, oh, it's a lo naim, like, it's not comfortable. I'm like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And then we were in the airport. We took a stopover on the way back in Paris, and I was buying an espresso, and I got a free Palestine from somebody, and I invited them graciously to engage me further. That's a nice way of saying. I said, say it to my face. The guy said it from, like, far, and then kind of around. I'm like, let's go. And I dropped my bag, and I went after the person, and I wanted to, like, throw down in the airport. I'm not suggesting. No, I wanted to. I'm not afraid. I'm embarrassed.
You wanted to have a conversation, or you wanted to start?
I wanted to kill him.
Okay.
I mean, I wanted to fight him.
Yeah.
But but he ran away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, say it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Jewish people aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I let him know what I thought. Now, that might be more aggressive than some people who are watching feel comfortable with. But get activated.
Yeah.
Don't just turn the other cheek. That's not part of our tradition. Do Jewish, like you said. Wear that Jewish star. Put on tefillin. Light Shabbat candles. You want to do something about the hostages? Don't just yell Bibi, Bibi, Bibi. Light Shabbos candles and say, I'm illuminating the world, and pray for them. And do something Jewish to flex that Jewish muscle. We have an event on Saturday night. I don't know when this is airing.
After that, but
whatever.
Okay.
and in a shul in Teaneck, and I just saw that yesterday. There's a real estate fair for Israel there, and they had a big protest outside. And I'm like, oh, I hope they come on Saturday night. Meaning, like, turn up the flame a little bit, let it boil to the front. Tell us what you think. The world is letting us know what they think about us. I would like to let them know what I think about us too.
Right.
I'm not interested in what they are and what they think. I don't care about it. Hamas is not interested. I want to let you know what the what Yiddishkeit is. I want to let you know what the Jewish people, that we have a Torah, and we have faith, and we have a promise for our land and for our people. And it's going to be good for humanity, for Am Yisrael to be in its land. We're indigenous. This is where our fathers and mothers lived and sacrificed for. And this is where we're building our future. And we invite you to be a part of this beautiful story. And we're going to fight you if you're going to fight us. And we're going to fight you and not give up. In our blood we shall live. We're not afraid of sacrifice. We desire life, but we're not afraid. Passover is time for us to kind of like flex that a little bit. Not in a militant and you know, in a some stupid macho kind of way, but like in a very really deep way, to kind of lean into our story, own our story of sacrifice and gevura. I appreciate so much that you mentioned that, and to give out, you know, candies to everybody. So
Right.
like, you know.
So I want to flip to the other side. So
Yeah.
another theme that comes out several times in the book, you talk about Pesach as being like the beginning of our love affair with Hashem. You use the word yichud, the idea of, you know, a sense of oneness with Hashem, with God. You talk about emunah and feeling faith in God. You know, all those to me evoke like a loving, deep connection with God. Say a little bit about that, and also talk about specifically, how does one do that, right? Someone's watching at home, they're showing up at their Seder next week, and they want to know, how do I want yichud and emunah and a love affair
right?
with Hashem. Where do I sign? Please, like, you know, what's the trick? I just say Manish Tanan, I'm there, so like, what's, you know, what's...
I wish I really knew.
Yeah.
But I'm in process with this also.
Great. Where are you in your process? Let's say that.
You said, you know, hey, we come in and we say Manish Tanah because that's, everybody does Mishnah.
Yeah.
Like that's like our moment, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of the most recognizable kind of like Jewish moments.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the deepest moments of the Seder. That is slightly performative, rehearsed, predictable, but it's such an opportunity. So I wanna invite everyone to, like, you know, to during the Manishtana, it's not just like what's different this night, because we know we're not having bread and we know why we're dipping twice. Like we've answered this last year and the year before, and also like for as long as our great-great-great-grandparents can remember.
Right.
And yet, the sages tell us, like, even if a person is by themselves, God forbid, at the Seder, we ask the question and answer it. It's this question answer. There is this modality. So an invitation that I'm going to try for myself this year and for those who are with me is to like do a little bit of a pulse check. Kind of like say like this, not Manishtana here, because not much has changed at the Seder. It's the same, you know, grandma's recipe and those dishes. Yeah. Unless you're like, I don't know, like some new Pesach program and whatever, you know. But Passover evokes certain tradition. And wherever you are, even if you're in Cancun or in Colorado, there's going to be talk about the traditions and the customs of the grandparents, and this is what happened, right? And those foods and those tastes, and somehow the borscht and the macaroons and I don't know, whatever, like that template is awakened. So Manishtana, what's different is not much in terms of like, you know, the ritual and rite and language and songs and rhythm, but to ask ourselves, Manishtana, how am I different? Manishtana, what's different in my life? The world is different. Things are moving around us, a lot of moving pieces we've been talking about. But how am I different? To just zoom out for a second over here. Just not to get stuck in the practice and ritual, which are essential. Yeah. Right? Which are essential to the experience of the Seder. Meaning without that, there's no tethering. You're going to put an orange on the Seder plate and like drink 8 cups of wine. Like it misses the point. Like the goal is not introducing new novel ideas and chidushim, like new things. The idea is to kind of breathe life into the ritual, into the practice of what we have, and to do it a little bit more intentionally and heartfully, and that is asking Manishtana, how am I different? This year I've grown, I'm a year older, the world has changed, life around me, history, Israel, whatever it may be. Yeah. How am I going to react to that? I mean, what am I feeling? And the way that works is you can't just show up at the Seder. You can. You can show up at the Seder. But that's what the first 100 pages are about, is kind of like, spend the 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I saw this with my father. My dad would prepare to lead the Seder every year. Right. What message am I going to impart to my family this year? What do I want to say? He would often quote something. One year he quoted Sharansky from Fear No Evil. One year my dad quoted something from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. One year he quoted something from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Sure. There would be something, you know, like this is our night, like what's our mission statement? Right? So if you're leading the Seder or you're participating in the Seder, show up with something, right? That's like an important moment, like to say like, here's what is different in me, and here's what I would hope might shift our family or move things a little bit. So like the State of the Union, right? An opportunity, like create that opportunity. Beautiful. You know, or at least to like, you know, pause at the Seder. You know, like, not to like, you know, listen, like when you're eating matzah, like just eat matzah. before you make the jokes about the digestion and about how expensive it is and, how whatever, this is too thin or too thick or whatever, just like realize like this is called healing and freedom, this bread. That's what the Zohar refers to this bread as, a bread of healing, a bread of freedom. This is something which is a bread of faith. This is something which tethers me in a somatic way, embodiment, that my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, the most basic, simple, fundamental, it's a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, and like not a whole lot of movement. It's very simple. It's the most basic thing. It's not, just a taste tradition. And during that eating of the matzah, take my pulse. Like, where am I at? Am I doing everything I can to move myself forward spiritually? Am I manifesting? Am I self-actualizing? It's not a time to like be thinking about, how much work, how much money, but like, what can I do here to like tether myself and those around me to something eternal? There's big questions and big moments, but it's big. It's our night.
It's our night.
It's our night, and it's the time. And not to be embarrassed to talk like that.
Right.
Like make a little cynical comment or distraction about money or the markets or politics. Like we have every other day of the year to like be focused on that, including on Yom Kippur and Shul when everyone's getting bored. Like enjoy the flavors and the tastes of tradition. And enjoy the experience of being around the table with people who are all there, and say like, guys, let's do this.
Beautiful, and something that you're evoking for me also. If this is that moment where we're like being present in the journey, the Baderech, the path to redemption, right? And we're noticing that we are part of that longer journey, going backwards and forwards. I'll say, you mentioned Manish Tana. One thing that stands out for me several years ago, my cousin Michael's son, Eli Panuski, which is my grandfather's name, who passed away. Seeing him as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, whatever he was, stand on his seat and say Manish Tana for the first time. We have those moments where the youngest person says Manish Tana. That to me, I remember crying, literally crying at the table and just being like this boy who bears my grandfather's name is starting the process of being a Jew. He's standing up and he's asking questions. He's participating.
Continuation.
He's doing it, right? It's continuation. Then you realize, we're doing this. We're building a next generation that's going to ask these questions. It's going to go one at a time, right? So I want to shift a little bit to a beautiful theme that you mentioned several times, which I think is super important, right? I know when we're focusing on bringing Geula, redemption, there can be, despair, and there could be focus on the work. But two themes you talk about gratitude around Dayenu, the idea of having gratitude Baderech, and you also talk about joy around Hala, when we praise God in the second half of the Seder. Say a little bit about the importance of gratitude and joy Baderech.
Great. I also realized that I didn't address what you would ask. I think it's all one thing.
Yeah, I figured you were avoiding the question.
But it's all one thing. It's all one thing. Sometimes we feel like we don't feel worthy. I often feel that way, like I'm not enough. And that if only I were to study more or pray deeper or be more refined, or then I'd be like I'd get there. I'd be worthy of respect or honor or whatever it may be, or God's approval. Everyone in their own way kind of has those moments of like, I'm not doing enough, that Jewish guilt, so to speak. Yeah. So to address the notion of yichud, God took us out of Mitzrayim for the sole reason that He cherishes, desires, and loves us. It was an expression of His unconditional acceptance of who we are. The way that the sages frame it is like, I don't know, halalu ovdei avodah zarah, halalu ovdei avodah zarah. The Egyptians were idolaters and we were idolaters. Like there wasn't really much of a difference. Even Jacob looked at the sons of Joseph and were like, who are these people? Like they look like Egyptian kids. Yeah. There is a midrash that says we dress differently, we spoke differently, but like that's trying to like push back against the reality that like we were on the 49th level of impurity, which is the code word in the sages as being like we were really in the pits.
We were heavily assimilated.
Disconnected, far, and that's where God redeemed us from. Not because of what we did and because of what we deserved, but because of a promise He made to our grandparents. Right? And part of the joy and the gratitude that can come out at Passover night is the recognition that like, however we show up, and wherever we are in our Jewish practice, and wherever we are in our own personal exile and struggles, the Master of the world wants us. We are accepted. We are ratsui. That is, in fact, the end of the Seder, the end of the story is already written. We end with Halel Nirtza. Nirtza means you are accepted. I have accepted your offering. Pesach never goes the way we hope it will. There's all these ideas and aspirations, and I wanted to say this and get to that, and I don't know, maybe the matzah balls didn't come out the way we wanted them to, and maybe the roast wasn't there, and Uncle David didn't come, and in the end my kid went to their in-laws. Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
This one was cranky, and this one, whatever it was, and the hotel, the sushi, really, it doesn't look like restaurant. Nirtza means that God is telling us, guys, Chevra, my beloved, show up. Do your best. I already tell you, now, Nirtza, I'm accepting you. I took you out of Egypt not because you're so great and because of your scholarship and your observance and because of your intention in prayer, because of your great generosity and your great perfection of your midot. No, I'm taking you out of Egypt because you're mine. You're with me. So just let's enjoy our time together. Be grateful for what you have and be grateful for what you've achieved. Focus on what's going right, on what's good, on the blessings in our life. And sing Hallel for that. And that leads us to the sense of yichud, of just being connected. You know, when in a relationship, if it's all about, you know, how much money I'm making, then my wife will be good with me. Or if I provide, you know, if I've lost that extra 5 pounds, if I lost that 5 pounds, then my partner will be attracted to me. Or if I get the raise, or I score the winning goal, or whatever it may be, fill in your Mad Libs of, you know, insecurity here. Then it'll be cool. We all aspire to be in a relationship, a friendship, a partnership with a significant other where there's just unconditional acceptance. I love you for who you are, for who you aspire to be, for who you can be. And right now you're in process. You're Baderech. We're working on it. Passover is a time for us to just, you know, kind of lean and say we're royalty now here. We are the sons and daughters of royalty, and we are worthy and we're deserving of being free, of being liberated, of celebrating ourselves and our tradition for who we are, not for what we aren't doing enough, and my parents would be proud of me if I did that, and my great-grandfather was rolling over in his grave because I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. No. Pesach, we have new vessels, we've cleaned our home, we believe in our efforts, we sit there as daughters and sons of royalty, and we celebrate. And we tap into our highest possible selves, a redemptive vision for the world. And we give gratitude. And we celebrate yichud, oneness with God. And we sing praise. And we recognize that we are nirtza, that we are accepted. And that's why it's such a beautiful night.
Amazing, beautiful. Thank you. I want to ask an open question. I'll see where you go with it, but this book is amazing. You have your own commentary. Actually, the way you present the Haggadah itself is beautiful as well. And then interspersed are all these different teachings. I don't know where you're getting it all, but like Hasidut, Jewish mysticism, the Moses Montefiore story, all those things.
Revisionist Zionism.
Yeah, revisionist Zionism.
Jabotinsky and Menachem Begin.
You have everyone. It's really amazing.
My teachers.
Yeah, and it speaks to also your ability to learn from everyone different, which is amazing. I'm curious, you know, on this particular year as you're going into Pesach, like, you know, share with me something, you know, I'm a Musar guy, as you know, I'm not deep in Hasidut or Jewish mysticism. Share with me, you know, a story you have on your heart or on your brain that you're thinking about coming in from one of these teachers of Hasidut or Jewish mysticism.
Jewish mysticism and Hasidut.
I'll do whatever you got. You tell me, whatever you're in the mood for.
I want to say that, like, what we share in common, and what everyone shares in common really, is a search for something deeper, for something more, for truth, for revealing our best selves. Rav Wolbe would call Musar, the study of Musar, Pnimiyut HaTorah, like the internal world of Torah. Sure. Is that what Musar is? So there's a lot. I'm going to share the most, to me, is the most traditional and important story that I say every year in our house as we're preparing for Pesach, and I'm proud that it's inside the Haggadah too. Story of Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the great defender of Israel. And it's a story, again, that we tell year after year. Just like we read the Torah portion every week, every year we tell the same stories. The Haggadah is the same liturgy. But when I hear these stories or share these stories or write them or tell them, I try to think about how I'm different. Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev called together everyone in his community in Berditchev in Ukraine, Erev Pesach, the Eve of Passover, and said, I beg of you, I need a big favor of you. If you could please bring me a little bit of Turkish silk. Now, there was a war with Turkey, and there was an embargo. You weren't allowed to bring that in. That was contraband. That was punishable by death. And there was, much more than, much more than the border guards, than the chaver who were checking your bags in the airport. At those times, it was much more brutal and much more intense. And people looking around saying, like, we don't have, there's no silk, or no Turkish tobacco, no silk. I mean, we just don't have it. We're not allowed to. It's illegal. And the Baderech said, please, if you could just, I'm desperate. Just a little bit of tobacco so I could have my pipe, and a little bit of silk for me to have for my pillow on Pesach. Like, but it's illegal. We don't have. And he said, dig deep. Search your homes. Anyways, within a few minutes, everybody started coming. This one with a little scrap, and this one with a little pouch, and this one with a little thing. Everybody somehow or another managed to find a little bit of a Cuban cigar, that they managed to, sneak in. The Baderech had this whole pile of stuff on the bima. And then he said, okay, Chaver, here's what I'm asking for you. It was Pesach, it was Erev Pesach in the afternoon. He said, I need one more favor. Could you just bring me something, some pretzels or some piece of bread, a little Chametz? Just something. Looking around at each other, I'm like, Rebbe, it's Erev Pesach. We already burnt our Chametz. Come on. Same way, come on, find me something. Everyone's looking around at each other. And they said, Rebbe, we just don't have. He said, no one has anything? I'll give you anything. I'll give you all of this stuff on the bima just for a morsel of bread. And they're like, bread? Nobody has. The Baderech had a big smile, and he turned to the Master of the world and he said, Master of the world, God in heaven, look at your people. Who is like the nation of Israel? Mika Amcha Israel. There are guards all around here that if anybody be found with a little bit of tobacco, a little bit of silk, they'd be punishable for treason, exile, death. And yet you have in your Torah that we shouldn't have any chametz in our homes. And look, everybody has tobacco, everybody has silk, but not even a speck of chametz can be found in any home in Baderech. Ribono shel olam, look how wonderful your children are. To me, I think of that story, not just on Pesach, but it awakens a recognition of the desire of every Jew to just be good and aligned with God's will, and with our job to seek out the good in ourselves and in each other, to focus on what maybe we're not doing, but to think about what unites us, which is like a yearning for something higher, a yearning to fulfill Hashem's will, the need for us more than ever to seek out the positive in other Jews, even those, and especially those who we disagree with. To be able to understand that, like, preparing our homes and our hearts for Passover, to preparing a pathway to redemption is by awakening mercy and positivity about each other and our nation, and telling our nation's story in a way which illuminates and accentuates the positive. And whatever we're doing, let's just do Jewish a little bit deeper this year, a little bit more, and be able to, like, push ourselves a little bit more to find good in each other and to find good in ourselves. And I believe that that'll awaken a real force of redemption in the world.
Oof. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, I'll give you the last thought just as we close out. That's I'm sitting with that already. You're someone's calling you. It's the same time as Rav Levi Bardichev. It's 2 hours before the Seder, and they're asking you, like, tell me what to do. Give me something to make it more special. Give someone a tip to enhance their Seder that's accessible.
At some point in the Seder, close your eyes amidst all the excitement and all the busyness and ask myself, do I believe that I'm worthy of being redeemed? What separates the wise son and the evil son, or the one who doesn't know how to ask? And everyone's at the Seder, the family's there. Hopefully this year the fifth son will be there also, and the fifth daughter, and all of Am Yisrael. But the question for Am Yisrael right now is, do we really believe that we're worthy of God's love, and of fulfilling God's plan, and of redemption? The answer is yes. Hashem says the answer is yes. The question is, am I there? And to just spend a moment at the Seder. Doesn't matter what you say and the vart that you say, or the little plastic frog or whatever you bring to engage, but for a moment to just ask ourselves, if redemption was happening now, and God said, okay, we're doing this, do I believe that I'm worthy of playing a part in that story? Do I believe that I'm worthy of coming out of whatever constriction and self-limiting thoughts, personally, nationally, communally, whatever it may be? Do I really believe that I'm part of the story? and that I deserve to be redeemed? I think that asking that question and getting to the point where we answer yes will help us have a meaningful Pesach.
Amen. Thank you so much. For those watching at home, obviously, if you haven't figured out, I highly recommend this Sefer, Baderech, Along the Path of Redemption, Haggadah Shel Pesach.
Can I say that even if you don't get it for Passover, it's kosher for Passover and all year round?
Amen. It most definitely is. Honestly, it's filled with so many rich things. You should start, as you said, well in advance of Pesach and read it slowly and get through it. And if you're looking for more from Rabbi Judah, then check out his book on Teshuvah as well, also Baderech, because if Pesach's here, that means Elul is around the corner. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And Chag Sameach Kasher. A joyous and kosher Passover to all.
Amen. Amen. May we be redeemed. Thank you.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבט שכיר